American TV host Jimmy Kimmel has made his return to late-night television, giving an emotional speech after his nearly week-long suspension. Let's take a look.
You understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it.
That's just a bit of his program, which of course aired yesterday local time. For more, we are now joined by executive editor at entertainment news platform Deadline, Dominic Patten. Dominic, welcome to the program.
Thank you, James.
Was this the return that you expected?
I think pretty much it was. We knew that obviously over the week there's been a lot of talks between Jimmy Kimmel and his bosses at the Walt Disney Company, which own the American ABC network. You know, there had been concerns about what had happened politically. There had been concerns about what this was going to mean, what he was going to say. And ultimately what we saw was he gave a very, very good and a very tightrope walking analysis of what had happened. As you saw there, he was very heartfelt, his voice broke, and there were tears on more than one occasion. But he didn't say sorry, and he didn't back down. In fact, in some senses, they doubled down throughout the night, as many people noticed. In fact, they even had Robert De Niro show up as the head of the FCC to mock the real-life head of the FCC, Brendan Carr. And, of course, after the show had taped, but before it aired, Donald Trump weighed in, as we expected he would, coming down from New York on Air Force One to Washington, D.C., to say that he couldn't believe that this loser had been put back on the air, that he was going to go after ABC again because he'd already gotten $16 million out of them before, and he was going to take another swing at it, and Jimmy Kimmel had no ratings. Well, up until about 5 minutes ago, Jimmy Kimmel had almost 19 million people watching his monologue on YouTube, and we don't even have the linear ratings yet. So people were watching.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Does this give Jimmy Kimmel's show a bit of a boost, do you think? There had been some concerns about how it was going financially, but I imagine a lot of people tuned in overnight.
Well, yes, of course. Look, we all know that linear television throughout the world is declining. People are going to different platforms, streaming and what have you. You know, here in the United States, some of the owners of some of the affiliate stations, a company called Sinclair and a company called Nexstar, refused to play Jimmy Kimmel, and they refused to play him when he came back, at least for the time being. Now, they make up about 20% of the market here in America. Some big cities like Washington and Seattle, but not a lot of them. But as many people said, just go to streaming and watch it if you want to watch it. You know, we live in a very different world now. This is one of the things that exposes the federal government and Trump's attempt to come down on his critics, to come down on people who say things about him he doesn't like, which is his powers are limited once you get beyond the bullying. For instance, in the digital world, there's almost nothing the federal government can do to stop people saying anything they want. And as we know, more and more people are moving to that digital world. So they might actually be the ones who played the losing hand.
What do you think? I'm just curious of your thoughts, what you think the legacy of this week-long episode is going to be, because it was interesting to me to see quite a lot of prominent people come out and speak about the importance of free speech. Even people like Joe Rogan and Ted Cruz have come out warning about the prospect of government intervention in the entertainment business.
I think you got to look at this in both, I would say, tactically and strategically. Tactically, you saw the Walt Disney Company make a very bad move, like they did back in December when they did pay Donald Trump $16 million to back off what was essentially a kind of a meritless lawsuit. And many people say that that's what started his walk of trying to bully media companies and getting payments and getting them to take people off the air, et cetera, et cetera. You did see people like Meryl Streep. You did see people like shock jock here, Howard Stern, say that he had canceled his Disney Plus subscription. You did see politicians from all stripes come out against this. But I think for many, and this might be a little too inside rugby, as they would put it, I think the real tipping point here, at least in Hollywood, was when the former CEO of Disney, Michael Eisner, who was pushed aside for the current CEO, Bob Iger, to take the job 20 years ago, when he came out online and said, "Where's the leadership? This should never have happened," saying, in fact, this would never have happened if I was still in charge. So I think that really put a scare. So when we talk about legacy, we can look at Walt Disney, the Walt Disney Company being worried if it would lose the ability to work with certain talent, if there'd be a backlash. We certainly saw their stock go down a little bit. But I think more importantly, I think as with so many things in the world, it's about people. And I think CEO Bob Iger, when he felt the sting from Michael Eisner, and I think that was part of what accelerated conversations that were already going on from the minute Kimmel had been pulled off the air. So less than a week later, he's back.
Do you think this will encourage media companies to have a bit more of a spine and to stand up to sort of external pressure?
I think the proof is going to be in the pudding. Let's see what Trump does do with his so-called threats. Is he talking about a lawsuit? Is he talking about regulatory actions? You know, some of the companies, like I mentioned earlier, Nexstar, who own 32, I believe, ABC stations around America. They own 200 stations in total. You know, they are trying to close a very big deal with a competitor that needs the government here, the federal government, to approve it. Disney, of course, are also involved in this. And all these companies are like they are in Australia. They're all intertwined with government regulation and bureaucracy. So they require each other. That is where Trump can get messy with them. But in actual fact, as we have seen here over the past several months, as his attempts to clamp down, his attempts to be the king of America, et cetera, the biggest thing that's stopping him has been the courts. And it's been when people say, yeah, I'm not into it. I'm not going to do that, mate. I'm not going to play that game with you. Bullies tend to run away when they get pushed back. Maybe Disney took a little bit of time to find some spine. Maybe if they stick with it, they might find that they're changing the tide.